everybody, my name is Caroline and I like to read books, so let's talk about them. Today's video is going to be about 5-star books. And no, that does not mean that I'm just going to go through and list every book that I've ever given 5 out of 5 stars to on Goodreads, because I checked. There's like 25 of them and that would make this a really long video, so that's not what I'm doing. But seriously, I feel like I need to explain a little better what this video is going to be about, because within 5-star books, there is a separate subcategory that is very significant. Like there's 5-star books and then there are like 5-star books, which are just next level awesome. These are the books that I wish I could describe better. These are the books where you get to the end of the prologue or the first chapter or wherever and you know, like you just know that this is going to be a 5-star book. And not even just a 5-star book, but an all-time favorite. I hope I explained this properly, or I guess I hope that you guys found this somewhat relatable, but I just think these are books that have some kind of like special quality that just made me really sure early on that I was going to love them. The first book I have with me that fits that description is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This book is about an online virtual reality called The Oasis, where everyone basically lives because reality is really terrible, and the prologue goes into detail talking about one of the co-creators and how when he died he left behind a video which was full of nerdy references and random clues and stuff, and he basically said, if anyone can solve my clues and riddles then they'll inherit my multi-billion-dollar fortune, which is awesome. And at the end of the prologue we find out that it's our main character who solves the first clue and kind of gets that whole journey underway, and by the end of the prologue I was just so invested in this story. I loved the nerdy references, I loved the idea of it all, and this ended up being one of my all-time favorite books, but I was hooked from the prologue. The second 5-star book I have is actually a graphic novel, but it's one of my all-time favorites, and it's Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, and this is the story of a young shapeshifter who basically shows up at a villain's lair one day and says she's gonna be his sidekick, and he's like, no, I don't want one, but realizes that she's incredibly stubborn and isn't going to leave him alone, so he's kind of stuck with her, and the story just progresses from there. The chapters in this are pretty short, and I realized very early on that this was going to be an all-time favorite, mainly because I loved Nimona as a main character. She's odd and crazy and kind of unstable, but I liked that she wasn't the hero of the story. It was really refreshing. Her shape-shifting abilities are really cool, and so is the art style throughout this entire book, but I will say the thing that grabbed me initially was the humor. There was a joke that within like the first 5 pages had me laughing out loud, and from that moment I was just completely in this book. I knew it was going to be really entertaining and something that I personally would really enjoy, and I ended up being right about that, and it's gone on to be one of my all-time favorites. Book number 3 is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami, and this is the story of Toru, who is our 37-year-old main character, and one day he's on a plane and hears the song Norwegian Wood by the Beatles, which was his favorite, and he's just transported back to when he was a student living in Tokyo and studying, and he recalls his first love Naoko and the experience of being young. The first chapter is all about Naoko and how amazing she is and how our main character is in love with her, and you can tell from the writing, like you can really feel from how it's written that he is just head over heels for her. After spending the whole chapter hearing how amazing Naoko is, the line at the end that really grabbed me is, the thought fills me with an almost unbearable sorrow because Naoko never loved me. And I read that and was just like, hang on, how can he be so in love with her and she's not in love with him? And it just completely surprised me and grabbed me, and I was so invested in this story after reading that. Another book that I knew really early on was going to be a 5-star read for me is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and I never really was that interested in reading this series. It didn't sound like something I would like, but one day, for whatever reason, I decided to buy it and read it, and I'm honestly so glad that I did. The prologue introduces us to our main character Blue, whose mother is a psychic and lives in a house with other psychics and clairvoyants and stuff, and basically Blue has spent her entire life being told or having it prophesized that if she kisses her true love he will die, and for that reason she just completely stays away from boys. But then we get to the end of the prologue and a new psychic, I think it's her auntie or something, arrives at the house and basically looks at her and says, this is the year you'll meet your true love, and then our story begins, and I just was so invested in it. And I feel like I say that about all these books, but I really was, because I don't believe in psychics or anything in real life, but in this book I was really confident that that prophecy was true and that it was going to be really integral to the story and that I was going to love it, and from that prologue until the end, I was completely hooked on this book. The final 5-star book that I'm going to talk about is one that anyone who has been watching my channel will know I am completely head over heels in love with, and it's We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. I have read a lot of amazing books this year, but this is still the best. Honestly, the most amazing thing about this book is that I think I knew this was going to be a 5-star book and an all-time favorite before I even owned it. When I first read the synopsis of this book and it sounded so bizarre, but I was so intrigued, I knew that if this was even half as good as I was expecting it to be, it would be a 5-star book still. And I read it and I was right. I tried not to hype it up too much going into it, but it was amazing, and I don't even have the words to explain specifically what it is about this story that makes me so in love with it, but it's just great, and I knew before I even owned it that it was going to be a 5-star book, and if that isn't amazing, I don't know what is. That brings us to the end of another video though, guys. Let me know down in the comments what some of your next level 5-star books are, because I'm really interested to know who else feels this way about certain books. But yeah, thank you for watching. I upload videos Wednesdays and Saturdays, so be sure to like this one and subscribe to my channel and stay tuned on those days for more bookish goodness. Toodaloo!